Coming up on Not the End, NDE.
I could feel myself connected to everything. And there was like this gentle humming in the air and this shimmering light sort of surrounding everything. And this love, like this unbelievably powerful love that I was a part of. I was connected to it. I could still feel myself separately, but I was so consumed by this beautiful, peaceful, safe love that felt like I was returning to a home that I didn't even know I belonged to, that I never wanted to leave again.
Many have died and returned to tell of their near-death experiences. Their incredible stories reveal to the living that this is not the end.
I grew up in a small town in Northern California called Keddie, and through Keddie runs the Spanish Creek. The Spanish Creek is an area that a lot of people have gold dredged ever since the gold rush, looking for, originally it was looking for fortune, and now it's just for fun for the most part, though they still do use big machines to dredge along the river, which leaves big drop-offs that, can be 6 to 8 feet deep, which, as long as you can swim, is fine, except for like the terrifying monsters that are in there if you're a kid. And mostly we just avoided them. On this particular day, I was swimming with my friends Erica and Joseph and their sister Rami. Rami was developmentally delayed and a very big girl. She was large boned and much older than I was, and so she was just a solid person. And as Erica and Joseph were playing in the water, they startled a crawdad, which then in turn shot itself backwards and ran into my foot and startled me, which forced me to step backwards and bump into Rami, who was then knocked into one of the drop-offs. So understandably, in her urge to save her own life, she grabbed onto me, and I had not taken a deep breath because I was not prepared to go under the water. And she used me as a ladder to climb herself out of the 6 to 8 foot drop that had been created. And in that process, I drowned. I felt my lungs fill with water. It was incredibly painful. And suddenly I was above myself, looking down at Rami climbing off of me, and then watching as my body floated to the surface and my hair began to float on the top of the water. And all of a sudden, I felt the most incredible sense of, well, first of all, peace. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't in pain. I was just peaceful. But what I also felt was this unbelievable connection to everything. Like suddenly I was connected to a part of every grain of sand, every piece of grass, every bee. Of course, Rami and Joseph and Erica, I could feel them. I could feel myself connected to everything. And there was like this gentle humming in the air and this shimmering light sort of surrounding everything. And this love, like this unbelievably powerful love that I was a part of. I was connected to it. I could still feel myself separately, but I was so consumed by this beautiful, peaceful, safe love that felt like I was returning to a home that I didn't even know I belonged to, that I never wanted to leave again. And as I was sitting there connected, I looked over and I could see below me the kids I was with's mom stand up. She'd been napping because she was exhausted. I believe she had 5 kids. And when she realized that I was floating face down on the river, she ran into the water and had to swim and get me. The current can move pretty fast. It was much slower that time of year, but by the time she dragged me out of the water and flipped me on my back and started to do CPR, I watched patiently as she did it, unconcerned, until I started to feel this tug back into my body. And I did not want to go. I wanted more than anything to stay exactly where I was, connected to love, connected to the divine, connected to a force that I now called Gus, which stands for Great Universal Spirit. My parents were not religious people. My mother was raised Catholic, so I had heard about heaven and hell and Jesus and so forth, but my mom was no longer aligning herself with those belief systems, and I didn't have any sense of anything other than that I was a part of everything and this incredibly powerful love. I did not go through a tunnel. I didn't see a white light. I just felt a connection that was the most powerful thing I've ever felt in my life. The word love is too weak of a word to describe the beauty that I was suddenly connected to. It was amazing. And then all of a sudden I felt myself coughing and sputtering and back in a body I didn't want to be in pain. It turns out it really hurts to drown. Do not recommend, 0 stars. So what I took away from that experience that has impacted and changed my life is that I am not even the tiniest bit afraid to die. What I can say is true is that I am definitely not, I am for sure afraid to suffer. I do not want to die painfully. I don't want to suffer before I go, but the idea of being dead being the worst thing that can happen to you is not in my consciousness at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably the best thing that can happen to you, which I'm not encouraging anybody to rush into taking their own life, but I also can say that when my people that I love pass to the other side, I grieve very differently than other people do because I know that they are in such an amazing, beautiful place and they are so much happier than they've ever been here. And that even in their connectedness to the other side, they can still feel themselves separate but a part of the divine. Another thing I learned in my experience of being outside of my body is that there was no anger, there was no resentment, there was no fear, there was no pain. There was literally nothing but love and connectedness. So what I believe is true is that when we are corporeal, we want the things humans want. Particularly when we're angry, we want revenge, we want justice, we want punishment. And oftentimes we convince ourselves that those things are to teach a lesson. But once you are no longer corporeal, there's no lessons to be learned. You're connected to everything. You're so connected that you could never harm another being, because to do so you'd be harming yourself. You're so connected to them and you're so connected to love that it just would never make any sense to do harm to anything ever. Plus, with that connectedness comes sort of an intrinsic understanding of why others behave the way they do. Therefore, I think that's the message that Jesus was trying to get across with his message that there is divine forgiveness. I think that forgiveness comes because love has no need for punishment or judgment. People that are afraid that they're somehow going to end up in a fiery hell once they leave their body, I think that fear is genuinely misplaced. I think instead what happens is that you become so a part of a divine love, so consumed by your connectedness and this incredibly beautiful force that is unbelievable, difficult to describe, and so incredibly beautiful that it doesn't matter what you've done in your life. It doesn't matter the things you've done. I mean, don't be a jerk in this life because you're going to have to pay the consequences here. And so will others around you. Like, it is not in anybody's best interest to be less than a stellar person simply because of the results of how that plays out while you're on this planet. But once you're no longer on this planet, that love that you will be connected to is unbelievably beautiful. I can only imagine that it gets even better if there is some sort of tunnel people pass through. That wasn't my experience, but again, I wasn't outside of my body for more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but it was an amazing experience. And if you'd like to hear more about how the result of that was incredibly increased intuition, visits from angels, an ability to know things that I simply should not know. And these days in my life, I'm also able to get messages from other people that have passed over. If you'd like to hear more about that, I've written a book. It's called Trusting Gus, Great Universal Spirit, and it's by Hilary Young. So you can find it on Amazon or here in Marin County at Copperfield's Books. Thanks for listening.
How is this story meaningful to you? If you're watching on YouTube, tell us in the comments. If you're listening to the podcast, leave a review and tell us there. If you or someone you know have a similar kind of story, please also leave that in the comments or send us a message at our website. Maybe we'll feature you. Visit NDE.com. Be blessed and a blessing, my friends.